We are live on our YouTube. Um, I want to formally welcome you, Krill, to this wonderful session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much again for taking out the time at a very short notice to be with us tonight in this session. Um, ये अपनी नौयत का पहला सेशन है ये दूसरा सेशन है जो हम कर रहे हैं जिसमें हम बाहर से गेस्ट को बुलाते हैं so today the guest who's with us, we're honored to have him, is my classmate, a very dear friend from Harvard Business School, um, somebody who has many beautiful dimensions to his personality, and is, with regards to today's session, somebody who is also an expert in the circular economy. Circular economy पे हमने कल बात की थी अपने session में, and what we talked about was this idea of making use of waste, reducing waste, eliminating waste, waste को कैसे खत्म किया जाए और उस waste में से किस तरह की potential opportunities निकल सकती हैं, जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज कैसे बढ़ेंगी, जॉब क्रिएशन कैसे बेहतर होगी मुल्कों में, और एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप भी कैसे बेहतर होगी, जहां लोग यंग यूथ के लिए अपॉर्चुनिटी है, इवन एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप के लिए, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप में, वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट में, वेस्ट एलिमिनेशन में, वेस्ट रिडक्शन में, और हमारे जैसे मुल्क जो कि लो इनकम मिडिल इनकम कंट्रीज हैं, उनमें स्पेशली वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट का क्या रोल हो सकता है. सो मैं शिफ्ट करता रहूँगा इंग्लिश और उर्दू के बीच में. आई एम गोना शिफ्ट बैक इनटू इंग्लिश. It will be, I want to keep it informal. I hope that we will also get to answer a few questions. So let's get started without further delay. So Kirill, welcome. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Jahanzeb. Yeah.
So I want to get started by saying, um, can we really reduce waste? Can this idea of a circular economy where we reduce waste or design it out of the system, um, is it really a dream, or can it really be possible?
Yeah, so first of all, hello everyone, and thank you for having me here. Unfortunately, I cannot see who is in the session, but salam alaikum to you all. And to answer your question, yes, definitely, we can. It already is being done in different places and in very different ways. And there are new models for prevention of waste. So not just eliminating waste, but also preventing it. So making sure that it doesn't emerge in the first place. So designing it out. All of those models are emerging right now. There are a lot of different strong initiatives, different approaches, and these approaches are growing. So I think what you have mentioned, Jahanzeb, in your introduction is that essentially it's a growth opportunity, and this is something that's special, I think, about the time that where we found ourselves today as a society, is that it's no longer about sustainability versus business. It's no longer about, oh, let's eliminate waste and save the world or nature, but we have to invest a lot of money, versus trying to make money. We are at the crossroads, if you will, where sustainability and business meet, because the core message that I want to give to you basically is that all solutions, all business models, all technical technologies are available. They are either already well developed or they're in prototyping stage, and they are ready to scale. And of course, it's a very complex story, et cetera, and it differs from case to case, but that is the basic takeaway. And business is the branch of society, if you will, together with governments that can scale it well. And this is what is also happening. If you want me, I can talk about some examples.
Sure. That would be good. If you could just give maybe one or two examples of how it's playing out. Yeah.
So I will give you an example from Germany about how waste is being, part of it is being taken care of. And it's also very interesting to compare it with the system that is existing elsewhere. So we can also talk about how it works in Pakistan, where there is also a development, as far as I know, and I don't know that market unfortunately well enough, but from what one hears is that there are also already approaches to dealing with the problem of waste. So basically what happens is that we as consumers today here in Germany, so I'm based in Germany or in Europe or elsewhere, buy a lot of products, and I mainly talk about food products. So this is my specialty, but we can also have different types of segments in here, but it's easier to focus on food because it's a very big market. It's a complex and very fun market, and food is packed in a lot of different packaging, right? So what is happening is that, of course, a lot of the food production is still local, but a lot of it has been globalized. And there are long supply chains internationally, but also within countries. You have warehouses, you have supermarkets where products stay on shelf for a while, etc. So all of those food products, they're packaged in all types of packaging. And this is something where we can dive deeper at some point if you want to. But basically, the lion's share of that packaging in Germany, which has a very strong reuse system, I will get into it. But still, even here, the lion's share of that packaging is so-called single use. So single use means this packaging is used for one life of that food product, and then it is thrown away.
Okay, I'm just gonna take a quick pause here and translate some of that into also Urdu, just to make sure that everybody in the audience is getting. तो जो अभी बात कर रहे हैं वो ये कर रहे हैं कि जो हम वेस्ट को रिड्यूस करने की बात करते हैं, ये वेस्ट को रिड्यूस करना बहुत, हर स्पेस में वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस होती है, हर सेक्टर में वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस हो रही है, लेकिन फूड में खास तौर पे वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस हो रही है. अभी आप स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, प्रोफेशनल्स के लिए, हमारी जो फैन बेस है उसके लिए क्यों ये रेलेवेंट है? ये इसलिए रेलेवेंट है कि बेटा ये आपको प्रैक्टिकल इंसाइट दे रहा है कि इकोनॉमी कैसे काम करती है, इकोनॉमी में कहाँ कहाँ अपॉर्चुनिटी मौजूद है, इकोनॉमी में कहाँ कहाँ पोटेंशियल मौजूद है. आप में से बहुत से बच्चे हमें मैसेज करते हैं कि हम एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप करना चाहते हैं, हम खुद से कुछ करना चाहते हैं, तो कहाँ कहाँ वो पोटेंशियल है जो कि मौजूद है. तो वेस्ट में बात कर रहे हैं, वो फूड की बात कर रहे हैं कि फूड सेक्टर स्पेसिफिकली उनकी स्पेशलिटी है, जिसमें हम बात कर रहे हैं कि जर्मनी के अंदर फूड पैकेज होता है, आपको पता है पैकेज होता है, शेल्फ में पड़ा होता है. तो जो फूड शेल्फ में पड़ा होता है, ये जो उसकी पैकेजिंग होती है, ये ज्यादातर पैकेजिंग सिंगल यूज पैकेजिंग है, मतलब वो एक दफा इस्तेमाल होती है और फिर जाया हो जाती है, वो फिर वेस्ट बन जाती है. आप एक चीज लेके आए प्लास्टिक के डब्बे से, आपने उसे इस्तेमाल किया, प्लास्टिक का डब्बा फेंक दिया, सो यू जस्ट थ्रो इट अवे. तो वो सिंगल यूज है, जिसकी वजह से वेस्ट क्रिएट होता है, वेस्ट एक्चुअली प्रोड्यूस होता है, जो कि सोर्स है इस प्रॉब्लम का, जहां अपॉर्चुनिटी भी बनती है. तो साथ रहिएगा, आपको बहुत सीखने को मिलेगा. ये पहली दफा ऐसा है कि पाकिस्तान में कोई प्लेटफॉर्म दुनिया से एक्सपर्ट्स को सोर्स कर रहा है, दुनिया से ग्लोबली, कि वो आप बच्चों तक आपको एक्सेस मिले जो कि अदरवाइज नहीं मिलती, और आपको एक्सपोजर मिले. थैंक यू सर.
Okay, thank you. It was good to hear Urdu again. Okay, so I will explain now what happens with that packaging when consumer gets it, so after consumers. And then afterwards, we can talk about what is single use and circular, what the differences are.
Yeah.
So I will explain now what happens in Germany. So basically, we buy all of those food products, and all of it is packed in one way or another. And then after, you use you eat the food, you unpack, and then you don't throw away that packaging directly, but we sort it. So we have to sort here. It's a law, right? And in Germany, it's also pretty complicated. So I've been living here for over 15 years, and it took me a while, several years, to understand how the system works. And it's always a very, very fun thing to observe when newcomers come and they are confronted with the system.
Yeah.
So there are different categories. So for example, we sort paper to paper, all the types of plastic in plastic. Then we have bottles that do get reused. They are separate. And then we have bottles that get melted. They're also separate. And then there is a category called Restmüll, so the rest garbage, which does not belong anywhere, and it's like kind of a one category for its own. So and organic waste goes also in a separate stream. So this is the first. So this is sorting. So basically, what happens is that consumers sort, and then depending on the stream, different things happen. And not all of it is bad. Not all of it goes to waste directly, because what happens is that for some material types, you can do very good recycling. So for example, paper gets recycled very well, right? Like they collect it, there are big quantities, it's automated, they clean it somehow, then they press it and they make new paper out of it. Glass bottles that are single use, so for example, for wine, right? Or whatever else it is, they go into containers, get collected, they get melted again, and new bottles are made out of them. And there the recycling rates are very high. The problem is in plastic. The problem is in plastic, because that stream gets collected, and there is a lot. So it's like, I think in German, if I might be mistaken on the numbers, but an average German consumer produces something like 36 kilograms of packaging waste per year. So if you imagine it, like there are 80 million.
This is all plastic?
I think in that number, it's probably all the different types. So plastic will be a proportion of it. But basically, it's just a lot of it, right? And then this plastic waste, this plastic packaging, different things happen to it. So a part of it does get downcycled. That means it gets melted, and then things like, benches or stools are made out of it, but it does not become food packaging again. Part of it is exported to Asia.
Wow.
And that's the problem. That's the problem, guys. So it used to be that it would go to China, where China would buy it, and then they would work with it. A lot of it would also land in landfills and in oceans. China said enough. They imposed the ban. Yeah. So right now, this packaging waste goes to Southeast Asia, as far as I hear, right? Wow. To different countries like Vietnam, etc. So, and then a part of it gets burned, and energy is used out of it, is made out of it. What is good here is that very little goes to landfill.
Okay.
Landfill is the worst, because landfill basically means that you take that plastic and you bury it in earth, where it takes, if I'm not mistaken, something like 100 to 150 years to decompose.
I'd just like to take another quick pause here, because also for a bit of comparison. So Pakistan में जो बात कर रहे हैं ये कि Pakistan में so Lahore, for instance, produces about again, I might get a figure slightly up and down, but I think it's something around 6,000 tons of waste a day in Lahore. And that entire amount, actually, I think most of it goes into a landfill. So वो जो बात कर रहे हैं वो ये कर रहे हैं कि जर्मनी में जो वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस हो रही है वो वेस्ट के साथ क्या होता है, तो कुछ वेस्ट तो आप जला लेते हैं, रीयूज हो जाती है, कुछ वेस्ट एक्चुअली गरीब मुल्कों में एशिया में भेज दी जाती है, जहाँ पे वो फिर लैंडफिल्स में चली जाती है, ज़मीन में दफन कर दी जाती है. पाकिस्तान में बाय कंपैरिजन, अगर आप कंपैरिजन करें, पाकिस्तान में मोस्ट ऑफ द वेस्ट है वो एक्चुअली गेट्स पुट इनटू लैंडफिल्स. तो वो एक मैसिव जगहों पे, जिससे एक जो मैंने कल हम जब आर्टिकल पढ़ रहे थे वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम का, तो जो हम बात कर रहे थे वो आपकी अवेयरनेस के लिए, आपको एक्सपोजर होना चाहिए, आपको सही इश्यूज का पता होना चाहिए. मतलब हूपू का जो एजुकेशन लेवल रेज करने का मिशन है पाकिस्तान में, वो मिशन यही है कि आपका एक्सपोजर बढ़े. उसमें आपका एक्सपोजर बढ़ना ज़रूरी है. आपकी अपनी करिकुलम की 4 किताबों से बाहर आपकी वो सोच डेवलप होना ज़रूरी है, और ये उसी का हिस्सा है. तो जो वेस्ट है वो सारी की सारी लैंडफिल्स में चली जाती है. लाहौर में ऐसा होता है, और वो फिर it actually starts seeping into आपकी जो water, underground water है, it actually starts seeping into that underground water, जिस वजह से आपका जो ground water है लाहौर का, various estimates हैं, but कुछ estimates ये भी कहते हैं कि about 1/3 of the Lahore groundwater in Lahore is already contaminated because वो इतने massive landfills हैं which are creating that problem. Sir.
So I wanted to just pick up on that and then ask you a question, Jahandar. So first of all, contamination is basically the issue, and what I would like to say is that groundwaters are contaminated here as well.
Okay.
Although there is a different system, and there are different reasons for contamination. So we have that issue here as well. And second, what I wanted to ask you is the waste goes to landfill in Lahore, but then as far as I understand, there are pickers who sort it afterwards, and they pick plastic that then they resell, right?
Yeah.
So not all of it. Actually, there is some sorting basically, there is some recycling happening just in a different stage. So it's not the consumers who sort, but later those professional pickers, let's say.
It actually happens. You're absolutely right. It actually happens. जो पूरा sort होता है, that the garbage, the waste that gets sorted, it actually gets sorted into at two different stages. So there are the recycling business or the recycling ecosystem in Pakistan, like in other emerging markets, is a big informal sector. So there are people, for instance, that we locally call raddiwalas, who are people who are going around residential communities, asking people to sell their garbage or sell their anything like paper, bottles, um, iron, things that are made of copper, etc. And so these guys would take that. So there is one sorting that happens there if you happen to pass by a raddiwala and you give it to them. So those guys are able to sort it and then sell it on. The other one is what you exactly said, which is large heaps of it's a very it's also a very iconic developing countries photo if you think about it. Like there's a large heap of garbage, and then there is this young kid going around picking, sorting, picking out valuable things that would be valuable items from that. So yes, you're right.
And I also saw another image where it's not on this landfill, but there are basically, it was women, and they were sitting in a warehouse, and after they get that plastic from the landfill, I guess, like delivered, and then they sort it further. Yeah. So it's quite an effort. And by the way, what I want to say maybe at this stage is that so it's not all bad, right? Like, and that's very interesting in circular economies, that some circles do exist. And when we talk about building new businesses or building new circles, building new systems, there is a lot of kind of innovation that is needed. There is a lot of infrastructure that is needed, but it really makes sense, and it's very important to build on existing infrastructure and standard. So help those guys expand, because they're already doing something very right? So
that's an interesting point. Just one quick pause. अभी वो कह रहे हैं कि जो हमारे यहाँ waste management का जो system है, जो हमारे यहाँ waste management जिस तरीके से already होती है, जहाँ जैसे हमने कल article में अपनी live English reading का जो article हम हफ्ते में 3 दफा करते हैं, उसमें जो Monday वाली reading थी, उसमें हमने कल जो World Economic Forum का article पढ़ा था जो इस topic पे था, उसमें हमने ये बात की थी कि हमारे यहाँ भी informal एक sector है जहाँ रद्दी वाला, जिसे हम रद्दी वाला कहते हैं, जो रद्दी ले रहा होता है, फिर बच्चे जो आपने देखा होगा कूड़े में से चीजें निकाल रहे होते हैं बेचने के लिए, जो वैल्यूएबल आइटम्स हैं। तो फिर ये कह रहे हैं कि वो जो ऑलरेडी सिस्टम जो एग्जिस्ट करता है उसको सपोर्ट करना चाहिए, उसको हेल्प करना चाहिए, उसी के अंदर अपॉर्चुनिटीज बिल्ड हो सकती हैं, क्योंकि वो एक ऑलरेडी इकोसिस्टम ऑपरेट कर रहा है। लाखों लोग उस चीज में इन्वॉल्व्ड हैं, उस इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर में वेस्ट को सॉर्ट करना, उसको कलेक्ट करना, उसकी आगे प्रोसेसिंग में। There are hundreds and thousands of people that are involved in that so-called value chain, right? In that entire process, वो जो ecosystem है, तो उसी को support करना चाहिए. Bro, one quick question that I would want to ask here is, as a young, as a young person, as a young student, as a young professional working in the developing, world, in this part of the world, how should a young man think about waste? Like, this, because I feel that there is, and I may be wrong, but as I'm asking you because, you will have a perspective, a better insight on this. Um, do you feel there is a need for a shift in mindset, as much as there are actually habits, but a shift in mindset where we start looking at waste as something which is valuable, right? Which is where, people could actually make money, because I just think, that's what's going to get people to start, you
Yeah.
know, treating waste differently.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's not, we think about it as waste, as garbage, as trash, because we don't see any value to it, right? Which is wrong. Even with today's single-use plastic packaging, this packaging has a function, right? It prevents contamination, it helps transport, etc. We just don't see it as consumers, right?
Yeah.
What is behind the line? So, and to us, it's trash because we also don't really pay anything for it. We just want to rip it apart and throw it away, right? So, and we don't know that what can really happen to it, and what could be the alternatives, right? But basically, I think this is one of the foundations that you have just described, and that is that we as consumers, but also as society at large and as an industry, see waste differently, right? And packaging waste in particular,
Yeah.
because there is definitely a value to it, and there are also ways to turn that value into viable businesses and into very strong products.
Yeah. Excellent. So we should, we're going to take, sir, we're going to continue our discussion right now, and we're going to take questions a bit later. Um, so moving on, when we look at emerging markets, and the reason I keep on sort of talking about emerging markets is because that's something that uh, you know all of uh, all of our audience, and also the basic infrastructure is so weak here that there is an opportunity, as I feel, to actually innovate and invent and bring in new things, because there is a big vacuum. Like there is a big vacuum in various spaces when you talk about the overall waste management, or the waste reduction process. For instance, when you look at construction waste, right? And um, we were talking about this yesterday. There is also a large construction waste waste from various sectors. So waste from the cement sector, waste from the food sector, waste from the fashion sector, clothing, fashion, etc. sector. So there are these major sectors that are producing this massive amounts of waste. Um, where do you think can emerging markets start to learn and pick up lessons uh, from developed markets like Germany? Like, because those markets are already far ahead. They're far ahead in other ways as well. Even though perfectly implementing a circular economy might still be relatively new for a lot of the markets. How could emerging markets start catching up? I mean, how could they already start in parallel, start learning from what's happening in Germany?
Yeah. So thank you for this question. So first of all, we are all in the beginning of this journey of building the circular economy, and here we have obviously a lot more infrastructure, but even for us it's still a very long way to go. If you look at the whole economy that you just mentioned, buildings, and I'm talking about food, and if we talk about agriculture and so on and so forth, there is an institute in the Netherlands called the Circle Economy, and they bring out global circularity reports. And at the moment, the world is something below 10% circular. So, there is a long journey for all of us. Now, I think that emerging economies in a country like Pakistan could make a jump now.
Hmm.
Because, because the infrastructure we have here is a blessing and it's a sunk cost, if you will, right? Like it's hard. Like what we're doing here is very hard because we have to consider so many different, etc. Whereas building from new can be faster if you build on the new level. So the parallel to that, Jahanzab, we had it at B School. For example, China, I think, jumping in mobile technology. They didn't have cable, if I'm not mistaken, or not too much of it, and then boom, they went into mobile much faster and a much better network than here. Yeah. So here, for example, since we had cable for a long time and mobile is already available, but you still have like holes, for example, and much slower rollouts because you have to build on that existing infrastructure. So that's the basic premise. So in Pakistan, again, I don't know, but back then when I was in Lahore, I asked around about and I heard that there is another cycle for water.
Yeah.
For big canisters of water. So again, there is something that exists. Yeah. And to me, right now, to answer your question more concretely, I think the best way a young person can do who is interested in it is to build a business that is circular by design. Mm. Now, there are very, very different ways to start. Yeah, and it's maybe also we can do it now or later, separate discussions. But in drinks, for example, I feel there is a clear opportunity, and there are also consumers, and it is complex, but also feasible to set up. And then, at some point, what also needs to happen is investment in infrastructure, because. So if we talk about, for example, a business for juices, like you have those mangoes, right? So yeah. I read like an intro, and there was a lot about how beautiful mangoes are and how good they taste, right? So imagine a company that offers mango juice, but also other fruits, and in a reusable glass bottle.
Yeah.
There are a lot of those on the market. They sell it to directly to consumers.
Yeah.
Those who can afford it. They're delivered on the bike, picked up on the bike, and then they're washed at production. Mm-hmm. It's a business that is feasible. But then at some point, what needs to happen so that businesses like this one and others can grow and can scale, the city and the country, but also investment community, the international community, they need to invest in infrastructure. And that means they will need to invest into washing streets, for example, in some kind of pickup infrastructure.
Yeah. So very interesting, and I think that's what leads us to the next question. मैं अपने सब audience को request करूँगा कि आप अपने जो आपके questions हैं तो आप please type कीजिए. हम आपके questions जितने भी possible हुए क्योंकि time हमारे पास limited है इस session के लिए क्योंकि हमारे साथ guest हैं जिनका अपना time limited है, तो उस limited time में हम जितने भी possible सवाल हुए, at least जो important सवाल हुए उनको ज़रूर आंसर करेंगे. तो आई थिंक जो पहला सवाल आ रहा है वो इस चीज़ के ऊपर है कि जो अभी बात कर रहे थे केरल के वेस्ट की इस अपॉर्चुनिटी में, वेस्ट को वेल्थ में कन्वर्ट करने की इस अपॉर्चुनिटी में एम्प्लॉयमेंट कैसे जनरेट होगी. And so I will request Kirill to just specifically, maybe I know you've touched on this point, but one question that's I think coming is how will it create employment opportunities or more employment opportunities in an economy like a low middle income country? And I think what specifically you might want to touch on, if it's possible, I don't know because I'm speaking as a layman, is there are jobs that are informal. Could it create more formalized jobs, like where young people could kind of look towards and say, and so just if you could just talk a little bit about that, because that's a question that's coming.
Okay. Okay, so before I go into that, I would like to do, in addition to your previous question, what a young person can do. So I said start a business. But even before that, what's important is to try to see what you can change in your own behavior. Right? It always starts with yourself. So thinking, can I buy less plastic package stuff? Can I not throw it away? Can I maybe take my trash and bring it to a Vala and wait till somebody picks it up and stuff like that? So it starts with, and then there are different ways to get active, and starting a business is one of them.
Yeah.
So and to answer your second question, so more employment. Yes, because you will have new businesses springing up,
right?
Basically, right? That will employ those people. So if you if you think about the circular economy, you can think about it as a loop that has different players in that loop.
Yeah.
So you have, and again, I'm sorry about it, but I keep on speaking about food, right? Because that's something that I know, but it's also maybe understandable, right? So you have a food producer,
right,
that makes this juice or whatever, maybe grains, packs it into packaging. It goes to somewhere where it's sold,
right,
goes to consumer, gets picked up somehow, then it gets sorted. Those packaging gets sorted, washed, and goes back to the producer. So in each of those points that I describe, and then maybe that they seem vague, you have essentially a potential organization. Basically, it could be a company, it could be a union, it could be a network, whatever, right? That is already active or that will emerge and grow. That will bring more employment. So maybe to make an example more concrete. So, for example, if you already have a lot of those reusable jars on the market, at some point it doesn't make sense. It might not make sense to wash them on your own, or you need a bigger operation. So you're going to have to hire new people and then you will need to invest into the line, washing line, or a washing machine, and then you have people who operate it, you have people who sort, you have people who pick up, you have people who go back. So, and you just have more jobs, but then due to formalization is something that for me is hard to judge from afar. But I think, if you have businesses emerging who hire people rather than, they are going and trying to sell it on their own, then there is a potential for more formal jobs. This is my hunch, but I think it's,
So let me just kind of translate that quickly. जो वो बात कर रहे हैं वो ये कर रहे हैं कि जब वेस्ट पूरी मैनेजमेंट में, जो हमने कल आर्टिकल में लाइव पढ़ा था, जो इंग्लिश लीडिंग का लाइव कल सेशन था, उसमें जो पढ़ा था कि आपकी पूरी वैल्यू चेन में जो आप वेस्ट सॉर्ट हो रही है, वेस्ट कलेक्ट हो रही है, जैसे एक मिसाल लें कि लाहौर में वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट का एक मसला है, चला आ रहा है। पहले हमारे पास एक तो कंपनीज थी जो उसको मैनेज कर रही थी, वो कंपनीज चली गई हैं, अब कोई हम उसको खुद कर रहे हैं, खुद प्रोसेस हो रहा है। उस प्रोसेस के अंदर नतीजा ये है कि आपके पास वेस्ट लाहौर का एक जेन्युइन प्रॉब्लम है, इसी तरह कराची का एक जेन्युइन प्रॉब्लम है, इसी तरह हर बड़े शहर का जेन्युइन एक प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि जहाँ भी इतनी बड़ी आबादी होती है वो मासिव अमाउंट ऑफ वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस करती है। तो वो उस वेस्ट को अगर प्रोफेशनली बिजनेस की निगाह से एक बिजनेस बना के हैंडल किया जाए कि यार ये वेस्ट रीयूज हो जाएगी, इसमें से जो प्लास्टिक है वो कहीं बिक जाएगा, इसमें से जो ऑलरेडी हो रहा है लेकिन इनफॉर्मल तरीके से हो रहा है, तो उसको फॉर्मलाइज करने में फ़ायदा ये है कि आपके बड़े बड़े बिजनेसेस जो हैं वो इसमें बिजनेसेस नए स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं, इसमें छोटे लेवल की कंपनी स्टार्ट की जा सकती हैं जो लोकल लेवल के ऊपर कोई सोल्यूशन प्रोवाइड कर रही है। तो उसमें वैरायटी ऑफ सोल्यूशन है जिनकी वो बात कर रहे हैं, और जब इस किस्म के बिजनेस सामने आएंगे तो उनसे ये होगा कि आपकी नेचुरली एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज बढ़ेंगी और रोजगार के मौके उससे बनेंगे। तो ये एक बड़ा एक इम्पोर्टेंट एक लार्जर पॉइंट है। So I'm gonna go ahead and ask one. Sorry, yeah, please.
Can I add another 2 sentences to the previous question? So look, we kind of described like all of those employment opportunities that are in this circle, but what I also wanted to stress maybe is that there are also a lot of potential jobs that are that have to do with innovation, with design, with engineering, with material science, with machines, etc. So that's also interesting. You have all kinds of jobs that can get created, right? So you have jobs for manual labor. You also have a lot of jobs that are needed, a lot of skills that are needed to do this, that are so if you will, higher in the value chain. I don't find a better term to do it. Yeah.
There's one interesting question which is coming in, which is I mean, what the question is really saying is, I mean, how important is sorting? I think it's going back to the source of the problem, because
Yeah.
you know, a lot of young people here will, as we, you know, as you mentioned, sorting is a big thing in Germany. It's not such a big thing here yet. And so this idea of, is sorting really the I mean, how important is sorting? I guess it's how important is sorting?
Okay. So look, guys, it's a massive pile of trash, and you can't solve it through one method. Okay. So it will always be a combination of methods such as sorting, recycling, reusing, reducing, and so on. Now, so if we talk about how circular economy works, there are those different sort of design option sets, if you will. Now, if you go to sorting, it's incredibly important. Whatever way you turn it, it's incredibly important. It really helps if consumers already sort, because it brings awareness. You know, it also makes it more feasible, makes building that system more feasible.
Yeah.
And what I see right now in Eastern Europe, which didn't have that sorting system a couple years ago, and they are moving right now to implement it. And of course, then, you know, consumers don't do it, etc., but they're also learning. But there is also sorting later, you know, as we have seen in Pakistan already. And there is sorting that later comes sort of later in the chain. And here in Germany, you also have sorting post-consumer. It differs depending on product and material. I'll give you an example. So if you have a bag with plastic and metal in it, you can sort it automatically because you have a magnet, you know, it takes out the metal. If you have, for example, glasses and metal, you can also separate it automatically, right? And there are like more advanced technologies that say that that can separate also other things. So they can separate small from big, they can separate different materials, etc. But the problem is that this automated sorting cannot separate it all. So sorting is also not the full solution, right? You also have to do recycling, you also have to do reduce. It seems like a lot, it seems like a big overwhelming thing, right? But that's just how it is, and that's okay, because there will be, again, different initiatives, different businesses going into all of those different streams. So you can have, you know, somebody saying, hey, let me try out sorting in my neighborhood and see what happens. Yeah. So I'm happy, like, you know, like it's also like doable. You know, you can then say, what kind of technology is on the market. So for example, to give you an example from a different segment than food, sorting was critical in textiles at some point. And apparently, and I heard it also a while back, you know, and then I haven't followed it as closely. But basically, recycling of textiles is also increasing. And there are several technical development behind it. One, for example, is that now there are some brands that don't mix cotton and plastic as much, so that they can separate it. They don't have to separate it later, right? Because if it's only cotton, you can recycle it. And then apparently there is a sorting technology that can sort textiles based on the type of yarn that is used.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So whatever way you spin it, sorting will be important. It's just very different, and it comes in different stages.
Okay, so thank you for that. There are two interesting questions that have come in. One is one example of, I guess, audience are looking for a way to quantify when we talk about waste has a potential, you can convert it into wealth. I mean, this, which was the topic for today, which is, how do you convert waste into wealth? And so I think what they're looking for, and that's what I feel from the questions that are coming in, what they're looking for is some kind of concrete quantification of one concrete example of, look, this is waste that could become wealth.
Okay.
Like, this is where, so some kind of, because
Yeah.
so I guess in terms of, we, in the article that we read yesterday, we read about X trillion dollar addition to global GDP if you're able to do this, blah blah blah. So I mean, I could take one limb and stab at it, and which is, if we start sorting our waste, and if we start using it, so this might not be perfectly the best example, but if you start using some of your waste and converting it into energy, where you have waste to energy solutions.
Yes.
Which is, we have a massive amount of waste that is being produced. If you do waste to energy, look at the amount of, look at how, look at the amount of savings that you could have potentially on coal, or the coal-based, fossil-based energy that we've currently.
Yes.
But that's just one macro level example. I guess at the micro level, is there something that comes to mind when you talk about, like, when you could say, look, this is the amount of waste that's being produced, and look, this we could convert into plastic, glass, XYZ, whatever it is.
Okay, very good. So first of all, this turning waste into energy is a very big lever, right? That would require a facility and some kind of collection mechanisms, but that would cut, the percentage that goes into landfill, which probably right now is, as you said, is very, very high. It will cut it like strongly, yeah. So that will be a very strong move. I will give you two micro level examples, and the first one is really taking waste and turning it into value, and another one is preventing waste from happening and turning that into value. This is important, I think, to contrast them. Yeah. So first, let's imagine we have this landfill, and we have some waste, or let's just say actually materials that are that can be turned into something else. So it will be things like water bottles. So if you imagine like what Coke is made in, yeah, it will be things like plastic bags. It will be things like plastic packaging, which is already being collected there. You can then buy that, and you can either downcycle or upcycle. And by doing so, you can then make products that can be resold again. And downcycling and upcycling, just the difference is that, and it's a blurry one, but basically, if you, let's say, take all of that plastic packaging, you have it melted, and then you turn them into some kind of screws, for example, yeah. So that would be probably an example of downcycling, because it's not like in banks, like where you can sit, chairs, garden chairs. They're often made out of those, yeah. You can also, however, try to make something out of them that feels at least more valuable to consumers. So, and there are lots of examples around the world that take waste and turn it into something very valuable. So make like beautiful bags, for example, or wallets, or there is a startup that just comes to my mind right now, and I think it was from Singapore, where they took orange peels and turn them into bags, I think. And orange peels you can also use in an organic stuff. So you get the picture, right? So you take that those materials that we perceive as waste, and you turn them into a product that can be sold on the market again and has a different life, basically. So this is one stream. And then another example is then how to prevent waste from happening and how to monetize that. And here I just to keep it simple, I'll come back to those juices. So if you build a brand that sells juices in glass packaging, because it is, and this the promise of that brand is then, you know, it's high value, it prevents you know, waste from happening, it helps the environment, but also is better for human health, because, you know, there are micro elements from plastic packaging that go into the foods and then we drink them.
Right.
So we are also contaminated because we drink water out of plastic bottles. We have microplastics inside of us. So if you sell that product in a glass bottle, you will be able to sell it. If you have the right consumer, you will be able to sell it for a high quality price. So that's how you monetize it and prevent waste from happening.
Excellent. तो वो जो so let me just quickly translate, go ahead and translate. जो बात कर रहे हैं वो कर रहे हैं कि देखें दो एग्जांपल्स वेस्ट टू वेल्थ की. एक एग्जांपल ये है कि जहाँ पे वेस्ट को लिया जाए, जो मुख्तलिफ किस्म की वेस्ट है, मतलब प्लास्टिक वेस्ट को लिया जाए, और उसको दो काम आप कर सकते हैं, या उसको डाउन साइकिल कर सकते हैं या आप उसको अप साइकिल कर सकते हैं. दोनों रीसाइकलिंग की एक शक्ल है. डाउन साइकिल का मतलब ये है कि वो पहले जिस चीज़ के लिए भी इस्तेमाल होता था, आप उसको किसी पहले से कम वैल्यू वाली चीज़ के लिए उसको कन्वर्ट कर लेते हैं. आपने प्लास्टिक दिया, उस प्लास्टिक को रीयूज़ कर दिया किसी मकसद के लिए. अप साइकिल का मतलब है कि आपने उसी प्लास्टिक को लिया और पहले जो चीज़ के लिए इस्तेमाल हो रहा था उससे किसी और चीज़ की तरफ आपने उसको कन्वर्ट कर दिया. तो जिस तरह सस्ती गार्डन चेयर जो है वो भी वो कह रहे हैं कि अक्सर इस किस्म के रीसाइकल्ड प्लास्टिक से बनाई जाती हैं, जहाँ प्लास्टिक लेके उसको रीपर्पस करके उसको रीमोल्ड करके उसको आपने गार्डन चेयर्स में कन्वर्ट कर दिया, या और किसी स्क्रूज जैसे पेच होते हैं प्लास्टिक के उसमें डाल दिया. मतलब आपने वही प्लास्टिक जो कूड़े में पड़ा हुआ था उसको लेकर उसको रीयूज कर कर उसको रिसाइकिल कर कर रीपर्पस कर कर आपने उसको एक और मकसद के लिए यूज कर लिया और वहाँ आपने उसे बेचा. तो उससे आपको मुनाफा हुआ, उससे आपको प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी हुई, तो एक बिजनेस अपॉर्चुनिटी खड़ी हो गई. दूसरी वो बात कर रहे हैं कि कुछ ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं जहाँ पर आप वेस्ट को रोकते हैं, वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस नहीं करते और वहां से वैल्यू मिलती है. मतलब मिसाल वो जो दे रहे हैं वो ये दे रहे हैं कि फूड एंड बेवरेज इंडस्ट्री से, कि प्लास्टिक की बोतल में जब पानी पीते हैं या प्लास्टिक की बोतल में हम जब कोई चीज़ कंज्यूम करते हैं तो वो प्लास्टिक के अंदर उसके अपने जो केमिकल्स हैं वो सेहत के लिए अच्छे नहीं होते. तो अगर आप शीशे की बोतल में चीज़ दे रहे हैं, आप प्लास्टिक नहीं इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं और वो शीशे की बोतल रीयूजेबल है, तो आपने वेस्ट रिड्यूस कर ली. वो जो वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस होनी थी वो अब नहीं हो रही. लेकिन अब जो आपने शीशे की बोतल यूज़ की है, तो शीशे की बोतल में जैसे जो मिनरल वाटर शीशे की बोतल में मिलता है वो ज़्यादा एक्सपेंसिव होता है, उसके लिए लोग ज़्यादा प्राइस पे करते हैं. उसको सब कोई तो अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकेंगे, लेकिन डेफिनेटली उसकी एक मार्केट होगी. तो एक बिजनेस पर्सपेक्टिव से, वेस्ट टू वेल्थ के पर्सपेक्टिव से जहाँ बात हो रही है, वहाँ आप एक्चुअली वेस्ट को प्रिवेंट कर रहे हैं. अगर आप किसी ऐसे बिजनेस में जाते हैं, फूड एंड बेवरेज इंडस्ट्री का बिजनेस देखते हैं, मैं सिर्फ आपके मेंटल होराइजन को, आपके देखने के नज़रिए को एक्सपैंड करने की ये काविश, ये कोशिश है कि आपको किस तरह अपने एज अ यंग पर्सन, एज समबडी जो कि इंशाल्लाह जिसका आगे बहुत ब्राइट फ्यूचर है, वो उसके जहन की पॉसिबिलिटीज़ खुलें. ज़रूरी नहीं कि आप सब जाके इसके बाद टॉक के बाद जाके वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट में बिजनेस शुरू कर देंगे. सिर्फ मकसद ये है कि आपका पर्सपेक्टिव खुले, एंड ये जो मेंटल होराइजन का खुलना है, ये एजुकेशन का एसेंस है. there are two more questions that have come in. Burning the waste in industry also leaves some residue. So this idea of two things. So one, the first question that came in was, which I can partly talk about, which is this idea that once you formalize and let businesses and let this thing be corporatized, wouldn't the informal sector lose their jobs? And I can take a stab and then I'll give it over to you. Quick thing is, I think Kirill pointed to that, which is the idea is not to replace, which was my understanding. The idea is not to, idea ये नहीं है कि आप जो existing लोग काम कर रहे हैं उनको फारिग कराते, that you completely replace them और आप उसको replace कर दें बड़े बड़े businesses से जो कूड़े के business में घुस जाएं और उसमें माफियाज बन जाएं और gangs बन जाएं and they start fighting over waste. The idea is कि जो already existing infrastructure ecosystem exist करता है उसी को यूज किया जाए और बिजनेस अपॉर्चुनिटीज खड़ी करने में. तो अगर सॉर्टिंग का एक साइकिल चल रहा है ताकि वो जो लोग ऑलरेडी एम्प्लॉयड हैं या वो एम्प्लॉयड रहेंगे या वो फॉर्मल सेक्टर में आ जाएंगे. देखें जो शख्स इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर में काम कर रहा होता है उसको कोई सर्टेनिटी नहीं होती, उसको कोई यकीन नहीं होता कि वो आज कितने पैसे कमाएगा, कल कितने पैसे कमाएगा। अगर उसको हम फॉर्मलाइज कर सकते हैं, अगर हम उसको एक ऐसे सिस्टम में ले आते हैं, ऐसे बिजनेसेस का वो हिस्सा बन जाता है जिसमें वो फॉर्मली एज अ कलेक्शन एजेंट काम कर रहा है, तो अब उसकी एक तनख्वाह है, उसकी एक प्रोडिक्टेबिलिटी आ गई। So what I just quickly mentioned was this idea that people working in the informal sector, one of the biggest risks of working in the informal sector is the insecurity associated with an informal job, especially when you're working at such a low level. So if one were, or if it was possible to replace that with some kind of a formal employment, that's actually a good thing, because now you've taken somebody who was not sure of certain of their income. You've taken that and you've given them a predictable income that allows them to actually start planning their life around it, right? So it actually takes that uncertainty and um, that unpredictability out of their income stream, which actually helps, which actually creates, which helps them structure their lives a little better. So this idea that wo jobs khatam nahi hongi, so not necessarily that those jobs get eliminated, it's that those roles could, hopefully become formalized, which allows them, hopefully, a better standard of living. But I'll let you, uh, give your take on that.
So I think this is one thing that will happen, can happen, has to happen, right? We cannot predict the future, but it's definitely possible. And this is what's been happening in different parts of the world. I think another element of it is this, just very bluntly, new jobs will need to be created.
Yeah.
Right? There's just, and it sounds like a lot of jobs that will need to be created in order to make, not only to just build that cycle, like we imagined the cycle, and it's complex, but you can kind of like build it in a small environment. You can try it out easily somewhere in Lahore in one neighborhood, but then, and even for that you will need new jobs. But then the point is you need to scale it to the entire city, to different product categories, and to the whole country. So there are a lot of job creation that is possible in here. That's the second element. And the third element is that, there will also be different types of jobs again, right? So it's not only about picking up trash and picking up reusable packaging and washing it. There are also a lot, there is data, there is design, there is engineering, etc. So you have also different types of jobs that will that will emerge out of the system.
Very good point. Very good point. उन्होंने बहुत अच्छा point make किया कि देखें, वो खाली jobs जो है वो और बड़ी नई किस्म की jobs create होती हैं, जिसके अंदर engineers भी involved होते हैं, जिसमें आपकी जो 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 डेटा एनालिसिस है वो भी इन्वॉल्व होता है, जिसमें टेक्नोलॉजी भी इन्वॉल्व होती है, जिसमें तो मुख्तलिफ किस्म के वैरायटी ऑफ बैकग्राउंड्स, और स्पेशली आप लोग स्टूडेंट्स जो, उनके लिए एक नया सेक्टर खुलता है, एक बड़ा प्रॉफिटेबल सेक्टर। और ऐसा सेक्टर, देखिए हमारे ममालिक वो हैं जहाँ वेस्ट का इशू तो कहीं जाने वाला नहीं है। हमारी बढ़ती हुई आबादी, और बढ़ती हुई आबादी मुसलसल वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस करेगी, और अगर वो वेस्ट को किसी प्रॉफिटेबल तरीके से यूज़ किया जा सकता है तो क्यों ना किया जाए, और क्यों ना अपने यूथ को उसकी अवेयरनेस दी जाए, क्यों ना अपने स्टूडेंट्स को एक वो अवेयरनेस तो मिल जाए ना, फिर वो बाद में तो जिनका जिस तरह अपने अपने करियर के पाथवेज होंगे, क्योंकि हर शख्स का अपना एक पाथवे होता है, वो अपने अपने जो पाथवेज होंगे उन पे वो एक्सप्लोर करेंगे। I just want to do one quick check that we're almost hitting an hour. I want to be conscious of Phil's time as well.
Jahanzab, it's okay. I have a back-to-back meeting, but I already wrote that I might be late. So
okay,
let's just wrap it up.
So the time the team is giving me 7 more minutes, so we'll skip 7 more minutes and we will do that. We're gonna take one more question, which was, I forgot the question. There is a question on burning the waste instead of the video. Okay, so this very specific question. I don't know if it's something that this idea that when industry uses a lot of is it about industrial waste? What do you do with industrial waste?
That it takes energy to burn it, or
what to do with the residue?
Oh yeah.
So, I don't know if I understand the question. The idea is, what do you do with the residue that's left after a lot of the industrial waste?
Okay, so I'm not an expert on that, yeah, on this particular technology. But first of all, ways to dealing with waste that we have mentioned throughout the talk, right? Burning it, landfilling it, recycling it, reducing it, reusing it, upcycling it. They're all different approaches, and they are also different in how efficient and environmentally friendly, let's say, they are. So the environmental impacts are different, for example. And there, it's kind of like a hierarchy of ways. Yeah. So in a circular economy speak, you would say reduce before reuse before reducing, or reduce before reuse, reduce before recycling, recycle before burning. And the reason for that is that when you burn waste or when you recycle waste as well, you also use energy. And in fact, you use quite a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's still worth it, because if you don't, if you don't, then it will go to landfill and contaminate Earth, and you win more energy than you use. So it makes sense both in business terms and in ecological terms.
Right.
So as far as residue is concerned, and that's something that I would encourage us and the person who asked also to afterwards maybe to Google more precisely, because that's something I cannot pinpoint like that. But I would imagine that it should be stored somewhere in some way, in the best of cases, whatever is left. Nuclear waste is stored in special whatever containers. I don't know how it works, but that's one hears in newspapers, right? And this waste ideally should also be stored in a way like that. I imagine that in a lot of cases, that residue does land in landfill. I wouldn't be surprised, but that's something to check.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess last closing is so we highly encourage our students to actually start asking questions, because one of the things that we are very sensitive about, and it's an I can't tell you how critical I think it is, that our students never get in the habit of asking questions. तो जो एक चीज़ मैं अभी इनको कह रहा हूँ वो ये है कि हमारे तालीमी निज़ाम के ऊपर जो हम जिस पर हर वक्त बात करते हैं, जो हमारा फोकस है, हमारा वजह वजूद है हुपू का, उसमें जो एक आदत हमारे बच्चों से ख़त्म हो जाती है वो होती है सवाल करने की आदत, क्योंकि उन्हें कोई सवाल करना सिखाता नहीं, सवाल पूछना से इनकरेज नहीं करता। तो हमारे इस किस्म के सेशंस का एक पर्पस ये भी है कि आपको मुख्तलिफ किस्म के गेस्ट स्पीकर से उनकी बात सुनकर उनकी बात को समझने की कोशिश करना और उनसे फिर मुख्तलिफ सवाल पूछना। तो आज जो सवालात आए वो बड़े इंटरेस्टिंग सवालात थे। I think this is where I was just saying that part of our effort and wanted to thank you again is giving students and young professionals this opportunity to actually ask questions, because oftentimes they never get to ask questions, or asking questions is not encouraged within whatever mainstream education institutions that they are attending or that they have been part of or they are part of. So I wanted to thank you so much once again. It was a lovely conversation. I am sure that you enjoyed it too, and that our Hoopoe fans would continue to see you frequently talk about something that I know you're very passionate about.
I hope so, guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it will be an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much. And we will end the live session here. I'm still going to do some chit chat, but we're going to end the live session here. So thank you everyone who were part of this, for being part of this lovely session. We will do more. We will do more, and मुझे उम्मीद करता हूँ हम इस तरह के और सेशंस भी करेंगे, और उसका मकसद यही है जो मैं बार बार रिपीट करता हूँ, आपको एक्सपोजर देना, पाकिस्तान में एजुकेशन के लेवल को रेस करना, आप में तजस्सुस पैदा करना, आपके मेंटल हराइजन को खोलना. ये वो चीज़ें हैं जो वैल्यूएबल हैं. अल्लाह ताला से दुआ करता हूँ कि हमारी ये कोशिश एक दिन ज़रूर रंग लाएगी, और आप बच्चे ज़रूर मुख्तलिफ सेक्टर्स में जाके ज़रूर कोई बड़ा काम करेंगे. तो आपसे मैं इजाज़त लेता हूँ. Phil, you want to say bye-bye to everybody who's there?
Yes, bye-bye, and thank you very much. And if there are more questions popping up, maybe we can answer them, on YouTube later or something like that.